And the morning came when the young woman was to report for work, and she didn't show up. So he called her home, and the mother answered the phone, and she said, well, that's too dangerous. I'm not going to let my daughter work there. And that really got Dr. Chop upset. And so, dangerous, Grand Avenue. So he took to putting the street to bed every night. Every night, about 5 o'clock, Dr. Chop would get in his car and very slowly drive the length of Grand Avenue and waving to people on the street. He literally called it putting the street to bed. And there was one tale of someone who came to some store and had money for an extortion, apparently. And Doc Chop, he had been in the Second World War. He told his wife, I'm going out to investigate this, and if I'm not home by 8 o'clock, call the police. And he put his pistol in his pocket, and he went out, and he came back, didn't say anything about it, but no one, to my knowledge, ever tried to extort protection money from anybody ever again. His wife, I've interviewed her, and she doesn't know. He never told her where he went, but he had some thought about the matter. But Grand Avenue just really took off.
How do you see the politics of the city changing over the last 30 or 40 years?
Well, that's a tough question.
It's a tough question. Yeah.
I guess I don't have any good thoughts on that. The great changes occurred long before we moved here. I mean, when this was a town that was home to the gangsters and all that. I mean, that great change took place then when a great reform movement came in. But I've always been quite content with the political situation in St. Paul, at least as far as I want to go now.
Now, as a historian, did you write some about the gangster period?
No, I didn't. I covered some of that in the Grand Avenue book. And in the Grand Avenue book also talked about the destruction of Rondo, which was, in my eyes, a really miserable experience. They put I-94 where they shouldn't have put I-94. They took down a vibrant living community. The people who were living there, they were mostly African Americans. They got no kind of recompense for their houses. They had no place else to move. There were restrictive covenants all over the city where you could move. That was a great disgrace on the city of St. Paul. And it was interesting. St. Paul had a planning and economic development office, which consisted of one guy, and he was in his 80s. And I think he had a young kid for an assistant. I've forgotten his name in this story. It's more or less accurate. And he saw that putting I-94 where they did, what it was going to do to Rondo, and that there was a much better route that it could take, just moving a few ways north where there were already railroads through there. And he tried to get this across. But those were the days when the house was better torn down than being preserved in the eyes of the federal railroad bureaucracy and highway bureaucracy. And he got nowhere, but he really tried. And he was up against forces that the Eisenhower Railroad Highway Program overran him.
Now, what books am I overlooking? You've written 15, is that correct?
Oh,
and you're starting another one?
Well, no, I'm not starting. No, I just finished.
Just finished one?
Just finished, yeah, that will be out in August. Ramsey County Historical Society is publishing it, and if I can remember the title, it's called The Dutiful Son, Louis Warren Hill, A Life in the Shadow of the Empire Builder. And it's a pretty good story. It tells a lot about early St. Paul, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of the other books.
Well, one is called A Dream for Gilberto, and I like that book. I don't think many readers did, although it was optioned for a movie, so somebody liked it. I don't think they'll ever make the movie, but they did. You know, they option a lot of books. But I had an office boy in South America named Gilberto Alzate. At the time, you know, all employers are not all of them, but we're kind of exploitive. We hire somebody and we don't ask about what their life is like. I paid him his wage and he did a good job, and that was all I cared about. And he'd worked for me about a year when I discovered, my gosh, this kid lived under a bridge. He'd been a street kid, abandoned at the age of 4, given away by his parents. So we got interested in him and we moved him into the school, and his great goal in life, as it turned out, was to learn English and go to the United States. Well, this was a kid who'd had barely a year of schooling in his whole life, but this was a school teaching English, so he sat in on all the classes, and slowly, painfully, he did learn English. And the story of how he got to the States is too long, but he did get to the U.S. got a job as doing laundry in a hospital, worked his way up to janitor, worked his way up to being someone who could take blood pressure and such. And finally, then he moved to Kansas City, back washing dishes in a hotel, but he could take classes. And he would sign up for the same class in 4 different high schools because he couldn't learn it on one class. So Monday he would hear the class in high school A, Tuesday he'd hear it in B, and he was afraid that was illegal, so he did it under different names.
Oh, jeez.
And he took his test for his GED, I think 8 times before he finally passed
got it.
He finally did. And then he went to Warrensburg State Teachers College, and he got through that and became a teacher in the Kansas City schools. And I learned about this when I was living in St. Paul, and I thought, holy mackerel. So I jumped in my car with a tape recorder, and I drove down to Kansas City and sat up really all night in a little diner with a tape recorder, and Gilberto just pouring, I didn't know any of this stuff, pouring out his story. And I took the tapes home, put a rubber band around them, put them on the shelf, and I forgot them for 20 years. And 20 years later, my husband had died, I was sorting books, and there was a rubber band had broken, and there was that little pile of tapes. And of course, I had a computer by now, which made it so I could transcribe it. And the St. Paul Foundation gave me a grant to find him. He disappeared, and I did find him in New York, and I found his family members and interviewed him. I got his whole story. And it's kind of a sad, he brought all of his family members to the States, some of whom didn't understand why he wanted to become an educated man. And he lost his job with the Kansas City schools unjustly, and those records have disappeared. I couldn't find them, which is interesting.
Oh.
But this man owned a home. He bought a home for his family. He owned a home. He loved music, a grand piano. He collected musical instruments. He collected music. And when he lost his job, he walked out, locked the door, and disappeared, left it all behind.
Wow.
So it's, gives me chills even telling the story. I found him in New York, and I got him reunited with a brother in Florida, and he died over a Christmas vacation about 10 years ago.
Oh.
Yeah, but anyway, so like I say, it's a downer of a story.
But what a great story of
It
perseverance.
is. Yeah,
Yes.
I love that book. I mean, that's a book I'm very proud of. And I wish I'd done a better job of it, but I still read it and get teary over my own
Good.
stuff.
Well, thank you for all the wonderful work you've done over the
Well,
years. You're
thank
a
you.
great asset to the city, and we hope you keep cranking them out. Okay, okay. I've been talking with Billie Young on the St. Paul Forum. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you next week.